Visual Basic. Um, you all by now have installed Visual Studio Express and have gone through your orientation to it. So this is of course the splash screen when you start up Visual Studio. We want to make a Visual Basic project. So we will click on New Project. We'll make sure that Visual Basic is selected on the left-hand side, that Windows Form application is selected in the central dialog area. Down at the bottom, we'll give it a name of Variable Intro, all one word, no spaces, and click OK. Alright, now I'd encourage you to go ahead and create your own project just like I'm doing. And what you'd want to do is you'd want to follow along and watch me do something, hit pause on the broadcast, and then go ahead and do it yourself, and then watch the next step and then do it yourself. Or if you can type as fast as I talk, go ahead and do it without using the pause button, and good for you. But it's best to always practice the examples yourself as I show them to you. Now, what you see here is you see Visual Basic. On the right-hand side, I have my Solution Explorer, my Properties. On the left-hand side, I have my Toolbox. Now, if you don't see the Toolbox, Solution Explorer, or Properties, any one of these, if they're missing, don't panic. All you do is you go to the View menu, click Solution Explorer, go back to the View menu, and click Properties window. And then you can go back to the View menu and click Toolbox, and they all show up. One thing that might happen sometimes is that one of these windows is in auto hide mode, where the little push pin icon up in the header for that section is unclicked, and you can see that my toolbox now resides on the left-hand side of my screen. If I click on it, it pops out temporarily, and if I clicked on something, it would disappear again. So I want to click the push pin to anchor it open. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a very rudimentary program here just to show you how to use variables. We'll get into actually how to make properly structured programs in the next lesson, but just really down and dirty, I'm going to double click on the label tool, the button tool, and the text box. Now I'm going to arrange these. I'm going to put the text box in the middle of the form, the button down below it, and the label down below that. Then what I'm going to do is I'll single click on my text box, and in my properties for my text box, which they're now the properties of the text box because I've clicked on the text box, I'm going to find the name, and I'm going to change it from text box 1 to txt input. And I'll name things on my form using a similar naming convention to the variables. In this case, it's a text box. So I start off with a lowercase txt, and then I give it a short descriptive name with a capitalized first letter of that name. In this case, txt input. Not the most original, but for a simple form, that's probably good enough. Now I click on the button, and I'll change the name of the button to btn input. Now the reason I do that is it mentally associates the fact that the text box and the button are related, and this is important to kind of keep things straight in your head, what's related to what, as you start to build more complex programs. You want to give things common names when they work together. Now there's one other thing on the button I want to do, and that's right now what displays on the button is button 1, which is kind of lame and not very descriptive. So I'm going to find the text property, and I'm going to change it to submit, which is commonly what you see on a button on a form. The next thing I'll do is click on my label. In my label, what I'll do is I'll give it a name, and with labels we call them LBL, and this will be LBL How about output? Once again, not very original, but it will do for our purposes. LBL output. And then I find the text. Instead of label 1, I'm just going to remove the text. Now watch what happens to my label when I click on my form after removing the text from the text property. It disappears. And it's still there, it's just invisible because there's no text in it. With my mouse, if I draw a box over the area of the form where that label is, you see that it does in fact materialize here. Alright, so now let's do some coding and let's learn about variables. I'm going to double click on my submit button. After double clicking, a new tab pops up in the center portion of my IDE, and this shows me my code window. I could go back to my form by clicking on the design tab, so I can alternate back and forth. In this dialog, what I'm going to do is put all the code that executes when my button clicks inside this private sub procedure which handles clicking of my input button. So the first thing I'm going to do is declare some variables. So I'll start off with my keyword dim, and you'll see that when I type a space, it turns it blue. The computer recognizes it as a reserved word. Next thing I'm going to do is I'll enter my two variables. So int age, and I'm going to use two variables here, age and old age. So int age, comma, int old age as, now watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to start to type integer, and you'll see that it pops up as one of the options in my autofill list here. So what I can do is I could hit tab and integer would appear, but what I could also do to save myself even more keystrokes, I could hit enter, and that'll finish typing integer and put my cursor on the next line, which is where I need it to be anyway. So just save myself one keystroke. Lots of time-saving techniques with Visual Basic. If you use them, you end up typing much less, so you're more productive. You'll notice both int age and int old age are underlined with green squiggly lines. That means, and if you mouse over them, you'll see it, that the little help text comes up saying, hey, you haven't used this variable yet. I'm like, yeah, I got it. Understood, yeah. I mean, it's the first line of my program. But it's a good reminder when you get deeper into more complex programs, when you might have forgotten to use a variable. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to now set int old age, and you see as I start typing it, actually I'm going to set int age. You'll see that it's that now int age and int old age come up in my autofill list. The computer knows that I'll be using them, so I can move using my arrow keys until I've selected int age. Now I could hit tab or whatnot to get it to auto complete this for me, but the quickest thing to do would be after I highlight int age to hit the equal sign, because that's the next character I'm going to type, and it completes int age and it puts in an equal sign. And I want to say int age equals whatever the user typed in the text box. Here's how you get something out of a text box. I'd type me dot, which means me the form, and then the dot, after the dot I'm going to specify what on the form. Well, it's the text box, which is txt input. You see it, the computer finds it in autofill. I'm just going to type a dot, and that auto completes it and puts a dot in there. So now what I'm saying is I want to fill int age with something on me the form and some property of txt input. Well, which property? I have a list of, there's many things related to txt input that I could choose. The one that I want is going to be text, so I type a T and I get to the T's, the different properties of the text box with T's. One of them is text, so I select text and I hit enter. So now int age equals me.txt input.text. I'm filling the variable int age with whatever is in the text property of my txt input text box on the form. Now the next thing I'm going to do is perform a calculation So I'm going to say int old age equals int age times 2. Now watch what happens when I hit enter. You'll notice I haven't put any spaces between anything. When I hit enter, Visual Basic automatically puts the spaces between everything for me, making it look nice and easily readable. Once again, time-saving technique. So now int old age will be twice the value of int age, and let's go ahead and display that in our label. So you use labels kind of like it's a way to display something, so we just say that it equals, that me, the form, and the thing on the form that we want to fill with the result is LBL output, and we want to fill the text property. We want to set me.lbloutput.text equal to int old age. All right, I click on another line, and you see that what I have here is that I will fill the text property of my label with the value in int old age. I click the start button on my computer, or in the program, and my computer displays a version of the form that I created. You'll see the text box, you'll see my submit button. So I put it in age, and I click submit, and you see that my label shows twice that. If I put in a different value and click submit, it shows twice that value. Okay, so what that is just a very simple way to demonstrate the use of variables in a program. One thing that I would like to emphasize to all of you is, if any of this does not make sense, please email me or give me a call. Computer programming can be some aspects of learning it can be will be very straightforward to you, and some it just won't make sense until they're explained a couple different ways. That's just kind of the process of learning to program. So please don't hesitate to give me a call. I'd be happy to elaborate on anything that you see here. If email is your preferred style of communication, please do not hesitate to email me. Remember that the only dumb question is the one that you don't ask. So please, please, please let me know if something doesn't make sense. Also, if your computer or Visual Basic seem to be conspiring against you, let me know, and we'll work through those problems as well. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you all have a great day.